National Nutrition Natural Health Reviews. 3 minutes of the latest naturopathic info with Canada's leading nutrition experts. Watch, learn, and get healthy naturally.
Hey there, Dr. Jonathan Beatty here, naturopath and a health expert at Nationalnutrition.ca. Urinary tract infections. Not the most popular topic to discuss. That being said, if you suffer from recurrent urinary tract infections, it can be very debilitating and have a very negative impact on your quality of life. Essentially, a urinary tract infection is any type of infection, bacterial or viral or even fungal, that affects any level of what we call the urinary tract, which essentially starts in the kidneys. The urinary tract travels down the ureters to the urinary bladder. That's usually where we store urine. The kidney is where we produce it. And then the urethra, which is the little tube that exits from our bladder to the outside world. Typically, urinary tract infections, a little bit more common in women. Well, not a little bit, a lot more common in women. The reason behind this is pure physiology. It's basically that women have a shorter urethra, so it's a little bit easier for bacteria to make their way up the urethra into the bladder and actually infect the bladder, causing the most common type of urinary tract infection, which is a bladder infection. Typically characterized by an overgrowth of certain bacteria. You'll feel pain or burning with urination. Oftentimes there's increased frequency of urination, and sometimes we get what we call urgency, where you don't have time to wait. You need to find a bathroom right quick because the urine is coming out whether you want it or not. As well, sometimes you can also get a sensation of needing to urinate even though you don't. And the reason for that is your bladder's quite irritated, and any amount of stretch or any type of pressure on the bladder makes it want to void even if there's actually no urine in it. So sometimes you'll get this kind of feeling or urge to pee without actually having to pee when you have a urinary tract infection. Additionally, the urine, sometimes you're not 100% sure. Typically it'll start to look cloudy. It may smell a little bit different. It may be a little bit foamier. So there's a couple little key indicators there, or definitely if it's a little pinkish or blood tinged, you definitely want to seek some medical attention as soon as possible. And it is important to try and treat urinary tract infections quickly and aggressively. The reason behind that is the infection can travel up the ureter to the kidney, and you don't want the infection in the kidney because it can actually cause long-term damage to the kidney. And if your kidneys start to fail, you'll start to develop all sorts of cardiac symptoms, because it's actually your kidneys that do a lot of the regulation of blood pressure, of blood volume, and can really help our bodies to manage how our cardiovascular system works. So it's really important that we have healthy kidney function. And this is why it's so important that you try and catch a urinary tract infection in the bladder before it goes to the kidneys, before it comes worse. So some of the common treatments, obviously you go to the doctor, you get an antibiotic. That can be quite helpful. I often recommend, when you do have to give a urine sample, ask the doctor to do something called a culture and sensitivity. Oftentimes they don't do this. What that means is they actually grow the bacteria that's in the urine and figure out which antibiotics are most effective against that specific strain of bacteria. What this leads to is a more effective prescription of the bacteria and a lower likelihood that you're going to create an antibiotic resistant strain by misusing the wrong antibiotic for the wrong bacteria. So this is why I always recommend to try and convince your doctor to do culture and sensitivity for the infection. Now, there are other ways that you can treat it. One of the things I'll often do in my practice, natural antibiotics. There are a few herbs that can be quite effective at treating urinary tract infections. Uva ursi, or Arctostaphylos uva ursi, sometimes known as bearberry, can be very effective in the management of urinary tract infections. I'll typically combine that with an antibiotic herb such as golden seal or Oregon grape. These are high in a compound called berberine alkaloids, and these berberine alkaloids are quite antibiotic, and they do have a similar effect as, say, a pharmaceutical antibiotic might. And so they can be used in some cases to help treat a urinary tract infection. That being said, if you're trying to go the natural route and you're not seeing early effect and early impact, I do recommend for you to go and get an antibiotic. Again, it's important to prevent that infection from traveling to the kidneys. Now, if you do end up taking an antibiotic, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you also supplement with a probiotic to ensure that you're helping to re-inoculate your body with the proper bacteria. Now, long-term prevention is important. This is where oftentimes people will say drink cranberry juice. The reason behind that, it is very effective, and what cranberry juice contains is a sugar called D-mannose. And D-mannose prevents the bacteria from adhering to the side of the bladder. And so this prevents the infection from being able to make a house out of your bladder, increasing your body's ability to eliminate the bacteria from your body and reduce the level of infection. Long-term use of cranberry can greatly reduce the chances of recurrent urinary tract infections. And again, this is very important for people who suffer from it. It can be, like I said, very debilitating if you get urinary tract infections all the time. So that's one of the ways you can do it. Another thing I often like is marshmallow. I often prescribe it as a tea. Again, increasing fluid intake during urinary tract infection is very important. And marshmallow root or marshmallow leaf tea is very effective at soothing the irritation of the bladder, which is what creates a lot of the symptoms. So it's not necessarily going to treat the actual infection, but it reduces the symptoms by reducing the bladder irritation. So D-mannose is a very important sugar. It's very unique in its structure. Many people say, you know, just put sugar in water, it works all the same, it's the same thing. I disagree with this approach. Sugar can actually be used as fuel for a urinary tract infection. It can feed the bacteria, and typically it can be filtered out by your kidneys. However, if your kidneys are damaged, you're not going to be filtering that sugar out. What you're actually doing is feeding the infection and potentially making it worse, which is why I typically don't recommend just sugar and water. If you're going to use something in the water, D-mannose, or using a pure cranberry juice. Oftentimes people drink these cranberry cocktails instead, which are basically apple juice and pear juice with a little cranberry for color and just a little bit of tartness. Not nearly as effective as using that really tart, pure cranberry juice. It's much more effective because of its higher D-mannose content. So hopefully these little tools will help you to better manage your urinary tract infections naturally, hopefully reduce the recurrence of these urinary tract infections. So if you like this video, please check out more of our natural health videos, subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And always remember, knowledge is health.